Let's get things started! This hand of mine glows with an awesome power!
Welcome back, my friends, to another awesome episode of the G Gundam podcast. Because, like the narrator, I can't name things properly. Just like he can't properly wear an eye patch. I don't know. I'll figure this out one of these days. Welcome back, everybody. We have done a whopping 20 episodes of this podcast, and we're here to do the next 4. And I am, of course, Adam Mickelson, aka Drak. And being joined with me today is my lovely wife, Andrea. How are you doing, Andrea?
Oh, good. And did you say 20 podcasts or 20
episodes?
You said podcast.
Did I say podcast?
It sounded like that. I'm like, wow.
This is how you know it's Monday, and Monday Monkey lives for the weekend, because I want to do anything other than actual work, apparently. At least mentally, for some weird reason. So, yeah, we are 20 episodes into this podcast. Or 20... Jeez, I did it again, didn't I? 20 episodes into this anime. Let's do that.
That works.
You haven't wanted to drop it yet, so that's obviously a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Because you've not gotten pissed, or in fact, you've enjoyed it a lot more than I think you thought you were going to.
Pretty much, if I haven't dropped it by now.
Yep. So we are 5 DVDs in, but here's the thing: we're gonna change things up a little bit because a listener of the podcast, thank you for listening, by the way, did bring up an interesting point. I didn't know this, but apparently G Gundam is on streaming in certain platforms. Because they did actually remaster it to Blu-ray. I wouldn't know this because I have the DVDs, and as far as I'm concerned, if I have the DVDs, then why go spend the extra money for a Blu-ray, unless it doesn't work anymore, and it does. So at that point, he's like, well, you say DVDs, but that doesn't really tell anybody, like, what episodes or anything like that. So it's great and all that you review them, but when you say, like, one DVD is better than another, everybody's like, what DVD? We don't have this. Because the other thing, too, is that if you got the Blu-ray version, I think they condensed it all down to 2 discs.
Probably.
So, yeah. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to change this up a little bit, and we'll have different questions to kind of cover this aspect of it. But they will be covered afterwards. After we've covered all of the episodes. So hopefully that helps with the compromise here. But at the same time, I'm not going to go retroactively do the same policy to all the other DVDs, okay? You guys already kind of know what the answers are. And so at that point, it still stays relevant with the previous 4 episodes that we recorded. So that being said, let's get into this. The other thing, too, that people need to get used to is we're really not going to have any mobile suit reveals for a while, because we are bouncing from the Shinjuku arc into, what I like to call the Guyana arc, the Guyana Highlands arc. And all the Gundams that we see, aside from maybe one, we already know. And so at that point, it doesn't really make sense to evaluate these Gundams again.
Mm-hmm.
But we will actually have a point where we do see new Gundams again, so we'll get back to it when we get there. But this time around, we had basically wrapping up the Shinjuku arc and then starting up and heating up the Guyana Highlands arc. Because at that, and as we'll explain in the episodes, like, they kind of build into each other and set things up for the final bits of the show. And so at that point, let's go into episode 17, which is Challenge, Mysterious Masked Fighter. What? You're looking off so distantly, as if you have something sage to say, Andrea.
No, I was just looking at something on your computer for a second, but...
Okay, sorry. Yeah, Challenge, Mysterious Masked Fighter. So, this episode basically is the wrap-up for Shinjuku. We actually see the Shuffle Alliance in the aftermath of Domon's serious epic fail to destroy the Dark Gundam. I mean, he had one job, aside from win the Gundam fight for Neo Japan, but he had one job, and he couldn't do it. And in fact, he made the Dark Gundam stronger. So, thanks, Domon. You're so good at what you do. And we actually get to have a little bit of a sad moment because, well, the only one that's interested in doing anything about the Dark Gundam is Domon. Chibity, Argo, Saisaishi and George all basically head back out to go do the Gundam fight again because their nations want them to do it. And unfortunately, Domon, he is still dead set on taking care of Master as well as the Dark Gundam. What he doesn't know, though, is that the Neo-Germany representative, Schwarzbruder, hasn't left yet. In fact, he's decided to stick with Domon and kind of observe what he plans to do. This then goes into a weird deal that has never been explained and is never really spoken of again after this episode. The evil Lair of the Dark Gundam? Where Master Asia has a bunch of Dark Army pilots following his every word. Yeah, it's never really explained or ever... Like, if you think you're going to see this cave again, you're not.
It's just randomly there.
Yeah, they just did that so that Master Asia would look like supervillain of the day. It's kind of weird, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, and it's also a lot of... Since all of these Dark Army pilots are zombies, it's a lot of Master Asia monologuing. And a lot of his stuff is basically, you know, he's going into Sun Tzu philosophy of war and martial arts and explaining battle geographic types and things like that. Did any of that make sense to you?
No.
Okay. No, it's entirely understandable why it wouldn't. Like, war is not your thing. I've studied a little bit of war. I haven't read the whole Art of War book by Sun Tzu, but I know aspects of it. Kind of thing, because I'm a guy and you know, like that's how that goes. So to sum things up, Domon goes out looking for Master without Rain, because that's what he does.
Yeah,
he leaves Rain behind a lot of the time.
Poor Rain.
No wonder she wants to get. No wonder she doesn't want to speak to him again. And so on his way to encounter Master, because he thinks he's found the Master Gundam, he encounters Schwartz. And Schwartz is kind of a dick this episode, would you say? He's kind of like Domon's elementary school bully in a weird way. I mean, am I wrong?
No.
He absolutely is. He's making fun of Domon every chance he gets in this episode.
It's like, you act like you want to be a big help, and then all of a sudden you're like turning around and saying,
well, and on top of that, he acts like he knows more about Master Asia than even Domon does. And so it's just like, okay, how would you know this stuff about him unless, I don't know, maybe you fought against him in the previous Gundam fight? But he looks kind of young. Yeah. So, I don't know, maybe. But yeah, there's a lot of questions right now as to the importance of Schwarzbruder. And it gets even weirder when, after doing all of this preaching that Domon is not ready to fight Master Asia, although Domon thinks he is because he has the super mode. That's the crux of this whole episode for Domon. My glorious super mode! It's so dumb that he keeps bringing it up, but
well,
Schwartz decides to show him that he's not as in control of the situation as he is, as he takes out a sword that he has on his back, you know, stereotypical ninja stuff, and slices a tree with it. Now, you've seen some anime where this happens, right? Somebody slashes a tree or a lamppost or whatever, sheath the sword, and then and they fall afterwards.
They slowly slide.
Yeah, slowly fall. I think the only kind of the stereotype that you've never seen, maybe you saw in because you've watched Kenshin, right?
No, not too much.
Not too much? Okay, so the only version of the stereotype you've never seen probably is the human version, which is like they slice them in half, and so at that point, they occasionally will do like this through the villain's eyes, and then they start seeing blood drip, and then they split in half.
Kind of.
So,
but not that show, but
yeah,
something similar.
So yeah, Schwartz does this to a tree, and Domon's answer to this is like, "Duh, I can do that too," and he tries it and fails dramatically. But he also finds out something very interesting about this sword. It's basically on death's door. It's rusted. It's chipped away at. It is an inferior blade. And in a lot of cases, you don't really know this about the stereotype.
It's a dull blade.
It's a very dull blade. And usually when the stereotype is applied, it's a very well-maintained sword. Like, it's perfect. kind of thing. And so it's just like, you not only question, like, Domon has the strength to do it. Because it's been applied in this entire, like, it's been implied this entire time. But then you see this really dull blade, and it kind of makes you question, like, how did Schwartz do it? Kind of thing. And that's kind of the crux of the Guyana arc, is all going, like, a lot of what's going to happen for Domon is going to center around this damn sword. And so get used to it. It's here to stay. What did you think about that when you saw the sword itself? Like, it's all rusted and dull, and were you surprised it even cut into the tree at all?
Well, the sword itself I couldn't imagine, but with Schwartz doing it, I bet he had a way of doing it.
Well, yeah, and we're gonna find out that way, actually. So Domon doesn't get it. He continues to go off against Master. He then ends up in a trap set by Master, which Schwartz has to save him from. This pisses off Domon enough that he challenges Schwartz to a Gundam fight. And to say he loses horribly, I think would be an understatement. He gets embarrassed by Schwartz.
Yeah.
But we also get to see a little bit more of Shadow Gundam Spiegel. And so at that point, this is like the one of maybe two mobile suit analyses that we can do. Now that we've seen a little bit more of Shadow Gundam's tactics, what do you think of it?
It's really cool.
It is actually really. It's got a lot of the ninja stereotypes. Like, it's got kunai, and it's got, like, laser nets, and it's got the camo. Like, we knew it had the camo. But the other thing, too, is the knives weren't really explained in the previous episode. They're basically like, do you know what tonfa are?
No.
Think back to Jungle Fury.
Oh, are they like
the Blue Ranger's weapon?
Are they like the sticks that have...
Yes.
Okay.
But these are bladed tonfa.
Oh, okay.
And so at that point, the edge right here is a blade. And so at that point, that's why it's, like, connected to the mobile suit. But when you see it in the cockpit, it looks like a tonfa.
But it's not, like, the same as, like, Zeo, like those with the sharp blades at the end?
No.
No, okay.
No. Because I wouldn't even call those tonfa, in all honesty.
I don't know.
You're talking about the Blue Rangers ones, and I have no idea what that weapon is. If people want to tell me, then they're more welcome to, because it doesn't really fit anything I've ever seen.
Okay, well, I don't know.
The other example that I'd give you is, do you remember one of the villains from the original Hellboy? The German guy who had to wind up to kill things. He had bladed tonfa, but he had, like, both sides. Whereas I think Schwartz is one side. The other side is just dull so he can knock people out, but it doesn't really matter because he can't swing it. It's attached to the mobile suit. But yeah, the Shadow Gundam looked pretty freaking sweet. Although, funniest thing, it didn't incorporate that sword. So at that point, makes you wonder, like, what was the purpose of the sword then? We'll find out. But, man, Schwartz, can we just give him a Dick of the Episode award right now? Because he was so mean to Domon. It's like, where's your super mode, Domon? Where's your super mode? That might actually be the episode title, is where's your super mode? Where's your super mode, Domon? Or where's your lunch money, Domon? Because, man, that fight, like what did you think of that fight and how it went?
It was sad, but funny at the same time. Kind of like, oh, you feel bad for Domon, but it's like you can't help.
But he kind of needed that schooling because he ran right into Master's trap. So he's not the legendary martial artist he thinks he is. He's still got something to learn. And so Shadow Gundam takes his victory. He takes his win and just walks off. And Rain finally catches up and comes into the middle of this fight, but she noticed that when Master originally trapped Domon, it was 3 Dark Army mobile suits that looked like Master Gundam. And now there's a 4th. And so this is another trap set by Master Asia of inserting extra units that are fresh into a battle to take them on. And at this point, Domon is completely, like, the way that Schwartz beats him is basically tying him to a mountain, and the laser nets are still active, and he can't get out of the net. Mm-hmm. And around this time, like, Domon is wondering how he's actually going to win this, and that during this entire time with Schwartz, he's not able to unlock the super mode. He's not able to bring it out. But when he's actually trying to win against this Dark Army mobile suit, he brings it out, which is not his intent. And you can already see he's very pissed at that. Like, he wanted to bring out the super mode for Schwartz, and he couldn't do it. And he kind of realizes the lesson that Schwartz was trying to teach him, is that the super mode is a powerful thing, but he doesn't really have control over it. And so at that point, Domon then sets off to the Guyana Highlands to train to be able to properly control the super mode. And as a training tool, he takes Schwartz's sword with him. That's why you see it in the opening when he's like wielding it. It's because that's where he kind of takes it on, and it's a part of Domon from there on in. So that kind of wraps up this episode. Final verdict on this one out of 5. Final verdict on this one. What did you think of Challenge, Mysterious Masked Fighter? I will say it is a much better introduction of Schwartz and Shadow Gundam. Much better introduction, although a dickish one. But, you know, I'm a mobile suit fanatic. I'll deal with horrible personalities. Obviously, I like Gundam Maxter, but I hate the crap out of Jiminy Crockett. So, yeah, what did you think of it?
Well, it was great character development with Schwartz, I think.
And Domon. You got quite a bit. You got Master Aisha acting like the Mandarin from the Iron Man cartoon.
Oh my gosh.
If people don't know what we're talking about, there's an old 90s Iron Man cartoon that Andrea is watching on Disney Plus.
Well, I'm finished with it now.
Oh, you're finished with it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why I'm thinking of that. Is like, he is, I'll get you, He-Man, throughout this whole episode.
I'll get you, Iron Man.
I'll get you, Domon. I'm sorry. I'll get you, Domon.
But it was sure just like, holy cow, I cannot believe he's like trying to...
After seeing what Schwartz did to Domon, are you mad at him? Like, now that you kind of see the purpose of why he did it, are you mad at Schwartz?
No.
See, I thought he was a total dick up until the very end of the episode.
But I think he's just...
When I first saw it, I thought he was an absolute dick. I thought he was supposed to be like an anti-hero. And then we see like the deep purpose behind him, like, shit. He actually might be a mentor figure for Domon. And that's kind of what they set him up to be.
Yeah, well, he probably did it because he's like, you know, trying to tell him, like, you know, your old school, you know, all your feelings about what has recently happened and what you have learned in the past is not going to help you this time.
Has thrown you off. Yeah.
And he's like,
and it's logical to think that. Like,
and then, but Domon's just to set debt, you know, like in his whole old ways and feelings about how his master betrayed him. Then it's like, well, then I'm gonna have to teach you a lesson to get you. That's
one thing that I think the episode has a hard, and also these episodes have a hard time kind of justifying the trading for Guyana, because up until this point we've seen Domon control the super mode whenever he wants. All right, he's been able to control it at will. But now, like, the purpose of this in the dub is to control the super mode, when in reality, like, they could have done a better job of just saying, like, look at all these revelations Domon had. Okay? He found his master only to lose him to the influence of the Dark Gundam, or however you want to justify that. He loses master, he finds his brother, he can't kill his brother. That would have been a better way to justify this. But instead, the dub went down the line of, I must control the super mode. That's one of those failures in dub writing that I really wish could be fixed. I don't know if the Blu-rays fixed it, but I might reach out to a few people that I think have them and see if they did, because that's a missed opportunity. And it's a much better justification for him going to train. Yeah, he's like, something's totally off with him because of all the revelations in Shinjuku, and now he has to go find himself, kind of thing. Like,
well, yeah,
and come to not respect, but come to terms with what happened.
You know, I think it would have probably. I mean, did he use super mode on his brother or the Dark Gundam or even Master?
And he used super mode on Master each time they fought. And yes, when he tried to slash Kyoji, he used super mode. That's why it actually fueled the resurrection of the Dark Gundam.
That's true, but I just think it would have probably been a lot more better if, he had those confrontations, but then when he thought, the only way he can beat him is with super mode, but they fail, I think that would have probably been a little bit more...
But the sad reality is like, as a viewer, you look at it and go, yeah, something's horribly off about Domon. Too many crappy things have happened.
Well, yeah, but
so you could justify it that way, but instead the dub justified it as, oh no, it's the mobile suit's problem, not Domon. Domon is Domon. He doesn't need to fix anything, except he kind of does.
But yeah, but I mean, it probably would have been a little bit more... I think it would have worked a lot better if, he got too overconfident thinking super mode would have actually helped him in those situations, in those fights, but it ended up...
You mean his glorious super mode? Sorry.
But it ended up failing him and causing him the fights and losing to them a lot more. It would have been...
He takes a lot of L's this episode.
But and then it'd be more justifiable to say, well... How could this have happened? I guess I need to go train and then use that as a more of a reason. But
they give a lot of reasons for Domon to take a loss. Like he had all the incidents in Shinjuku. The other one that I want to add on top of it is, so the way that the Shuffle Alliance works is the King of Hearts is the leader of it. And I can't help but wonder if Domon took a personal loss when he saw all of the other Shuffle Alliance members leave. Instead of pursue the Dark Gundam with him. Because, look, he was training with the former King of Hearts. He had to have known through stories of the Shuffle Alliance that Master Asia was a great leader. And so he immediately assumed that as soon as Master acknowledged him as the new King of Hearts, that he would be a great leader, and it turns out he's not. So, like, I also kind of take that as another personal loss for Domon that isn't really highlighted. But, yeah, no, so... Score out of 5, where would you put Challenge Mysterious Masked Fighter? I put it up like a 3.5. It's really teetering on a 4 for me. It's well done when it comes to Schwartz and Domon and that development. Master kind of takes a lot of the seriousness out of it and makes it kind of kooky. But I love Master. It's just this time around, I don't think they knew what they wanted to do with him at this point. So, yeah, I'd give it a 3.5 out of 5. I think it's really close to a 4, but Master kind of takes it down for me.
I would say probably a 3, at least.
Okay. Yeah, kind of makes sense. Like, do you have the same complaint, or...?
I guess I probably, unless there's a... mysterious reveal about Master that I'm not aware of, but where you have the Dark Gundam and Master just in the same area, but where's Kyoji in this,
Yeah, he was missing. We didn't know where he was, but we saw him. We saw him in the previous episode. Does make you wonder, doesn't it? Okay, so at that point, let's move into episode 18, which is Steal the Secret, Scheme of the Beautiful Warriors. This starts up the Guyana Highlands arc, where Domon decides to go to where he and Master trained when he was a boy, and that was in a secret area of the Guyana Highlands in South America. So really lush landscape and great training ground. Like, you have Domon basically parked for the next few episodes next to this giant waterfall, and it's really pretty. But one of the problems of this is that Domon's off training, and that's great, and he should be doing that. Rain is kind of stuck being bored. She's just kind of there. Like, you could see her occasionally doing maintenance on the Gundam, but most of the time, like, she's soaking her feet in the river.
I'm surprised piranhas. Like I said,
why doesn't she have, like, fish bites all over her feet?
I don't know, but they looked like they were going to bite her toes.
They did kind of, yeah. So you have that, but also we have another big problem kind of brewing in the background. Chibity Crockett went back to the Gundam fight, and he has not been the same since Shinjuku. Chibity basically goes berserker on the Gundam he's fighting, in the episode, which we don't know what nation it's representing. It has scimitars, so we can guess like an Arabic country, but he goes berserk on it, and partially because he's hallucinating about the Dark Gundam. He hallucinates that he gets a new batch of DG cells and they're taking him over and all that. Like he's obviously got some issues that have not been dealt with concerning the Dark Gundam. And he takes it out on the poor guy's Gundam, man. It's like they couldn't even show the head section after he was done. That's how bad it was. But obviously, I can never remember all their names. Bunny, Shirley, Kath, and Janet, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah. They all kind of noticed the problem. And they're trying to figure out, like, what should we do here? Chibity's acting really, really weird. And the other thing that's kind of scary is Chibity blacks out during these. Like, he actually wakes up afterwards and notices the head section of the Gundam. And he's like, what the hell did I just do? Like, so he gets so scared, he doesn't remember it. He blacks out. But a mysterious old man decides to point out that maybe if Chibity had a true rival to be able to train with, maybe he could overcome this problem. Said old man eventually is revealed to be Schwarzbruder, master of disguise. So Bunny, Kath, Shirley, and Janet all decide to go to the Guyana Highlands. I don't know how they know Domon's there, because they all parted in Shinjuku, but they apparently know he's there. And decide to conduct a Metal Gear Solid mission to acquire the data, the fight data from the Shining Gundam, which is kind of illegal in the Gundam fight, or at least they kind of allude to the fact it's illegal in the Gundam fight. But this is also as part of a ploy to get Chibity to maybe come and rescue them and or fight Domon.
And the way they do it is through a Dear John letter.
Yes!
Basically.
Let's go into that for a second. So Chibity, after having that happen, he goes to the bar. It's obvious he's drunk. Like, he's got very rosy cheeks. And then he hits the couch and he sees basically, a Dear Chibity letter.
Kind of like it's like
saying, Dear Chibity, you're a wuss. We're going to go do your job for you. Maybe you can come and join us and help out.
Oh my gosh.
I remember looking at you and going, bitch. Like, that is the worst way to do it. But I mean, ultimately it worked.
But it just seems like going down that road, like they're dumping me sort of thing. But
I thought they weren't your girlfriends.
No, but it kind of seems like that. And he's like, oh, and going right out.
Yeah. To which at this point, we find out a little bit more of their backstory. Turns out that they kind of have a similar growing up compared to Chibity. The only thing that's really creepy about it is, so the flashback happens and they're like, I don't know, 14. They're like early teenagers. So at that point, like 14, 15, and they try to sneak onto a colony shuttle to go up to the Neo America colony. And it just so happens that Chibity, who hasn't aged a day, might I add, like he looks exactly the way he did in that memory, and he brings them on to work for him. And so it's just like, to anybody who is assuming that they are girlfriends of Chibity, now you're like, ew.
They're probably like, they're like the number one fans or something.
Not even that. They were just little punks, and I guess Chibity just kind of saw himself in them.
I know.
So he just took them on to let them be part of his crew, I guess.
His own little personal cheerleading squad there. Almost.
I hope it's only that. There's a lot implied here. And I've seen plenty of fanfic of Chibity and in all of the various orgies that he would have with these four girls. But the problem is that you see this backstory and you immediately go, ew. Because, like, no. Because then it makes you wonder, like, how old is Chibity? Because he doesn't age from then to now. And they were like 14, maybe, let's push it and say 15. So at least like 4 to 5 years have passed since then. So yeah,
Well, we don't know.
It's squicky. It's very creepy. But, oh, jeez. Like, even thinking about it now, it's just like, I can't move past it. Anyway, so they commence their mission. They sneak into the Shining Gundam while Rain's taking a nap. Nice job there, mechanic. You didn't set up a security system for the Gundam? Like, really, let's take this apart for a second. There isn't like a button you press and immediately, like kind of like a car alarm. Somebody opens up the cockpit. Oh, alert. Nothing like that?
Nope.
Nothing at all. Nothing to say on this? That's not weird?
I don't have any words for that.
It's the dumbest thing. Like, why wouldn't you have a security system put in? But anyway, so they steal the data. They overpower Rain, to which Rain decides to follow after them in high heels.
I couldn't tell if she was wearing high.
They are heeled boots. They're like those really, like, they're not like thigh high. They're like really shoe looking heel boots. But yeah, she's running in heels. It then starts to rain. And then we have the coin. Whenever it rains, somebody's got to fall down a hill and get into a bad situation, right? It turns out that one of the girls, don't ask me which one. I can only keep track of Bunny. I can only keep track of her. She hurts her ankle because, of course. And all of a sudden, when they're trying to save themselves, they get stuck in a massive downpour of rain that is now creating a bit of a flood. And so now they're on the lone island amidst a roaring river, and they have to do the unthinkable. They have to call Chibity for help.
And yet they were like,
well, there goes all that girl power, right?
Yep.
So what did you think about that? Like, all of this has been girl power, and then all of a sudden, we have to call Chibity.
They're like, oh.
We done effed up. We got to call Chibity.
Oh, brother. They're like, we can do this. No, we can't.
No, you can't. And all the while, Rain is basically doing the heart of the card speech of like, the Gundam fighter and the crew work together. It's like, yeah, like you and Domon do. Might I add, Domon's not here to save your ass. At least not until later. So we have that going on. Cut back to Chibity. He comes out to Guyana and comes across Domon training. And immediately challenges him to a Gundam fight. Like, immediately goes into the boxer mode, and he's ready to go. And they've been fighting up until this massive storm, and they see a flare go up in the distance, which is basically the girls calling Chibity. And so Domon in the Shining Gundam and Chibity in Maxter go and try to save them. But while they're trying to do that, a mudslide happens, and now they have a bigger problem. Like, they have to make sure that this mudslide does not flood and take care of the girls. So at that point, we get to see a couple of really cool moments. We get to see Maxter basically do like these lightning punches to take care of the water. We get to see Shining Finger just take care of this massive wave, all so that they can save the girls, but they can't decide who's actually saving the girls. So much so that who was it that saved them? I can't remember. Was it them later? No, I don't think so. I think somebody came in and saved them.
For some reason, I thought it was Domon, but I don't know if that was right.
It might have been them after. Oh, no, Schwartz did.
Oh.
That's right. Because all the while, Schwartz is watching in the... Man, Schwartz is a real stalker. Schwartz is watching in the Guyana Highlands for both Domon's and Chibity's training. So, yeah, it was Shadow Gundam that came in and saved them. So now we know that Schwartz is out there. To which Chibity gets mad at the girls for trying to steal the Gundam data and punches the disc destroyed.
That was cool.
Cool, but he's not bleeding. I didn't realize you could punch a floppy disk and it just explodes.
Apparently he's out.
But that's Chibity Crockett for you. And that pretty much kind of and also we also do notice that when the girls get in real trouble, Domon once again activates the super mode, but again, he can't control it. So it comes off in this episode that Chibity's had this huge revelation, but Domon still has a lot to learn. So it's kind of a I want to say like a dull note for Domon, but it's cool for Chibity fans. So what overall did you think of Steal the Secret Scheme of the Beautiful Warriors?
Probably not one of my favorite ones after, one of the ones.
No, the previous episode was better than this.
Yeah, but it was kind of interesting when you
Which is really sad considering how much Schwartz was a dick. It's like, where's your super mode, Domon? And then we're making fun of the girls.
But it was just kind of funny that Chibity comes to the islands and he's like watching Domon dive and he's like, what's he doing? Like, he's like, should I do something?
Yeah.
And then I love it when he was like, okay, maybe I'll join in and we'll just do a sparring practice or something.
Something like that, yeah. It was weird.
But just watching both of them trying to destroy rocks and stuff and prevent the mudslide coming.
I have one word for this episode, in my personal opinion, and maybe it'll work with you too. Forced. It's all forced.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's forced because Chibity was off in America, so now he's forced to go to the Guyana Highlands to go rescue the girls. They are forced to go and get the data because Chibity's has had these problems. Domon is forced to face Chibity and then save the girls. Yeah, it's all forced.
Mm-hmm.
And all forced by Schwartz Bruder, as an obvious, because obviously he's like the cog and all, the mastermind behind all this.
Oh yeah, he's like, okay, it's time to get the shuffle lines back together. Yeah.
But at the same time, he's also like they're kind of painting Schwartz as like this mentor figure, like he's pushing Domon to reach something that he doesn't know he has yet. If we had to score Steal the Secret Scheme of the Beautiful Warriors out of 5, how would we? It's a 2 to me. Even the debut episode and the debut episode of Chibity and Tequila Gundam were better than this. I gotta give it a 2. It's not. This is like one of my least favorite episodes of the entire series because it's so forced that it actually kind of hurts Chibity as a character, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd give it a 2 just because I was like,
For the same reasons, or do you have other ones?
Just the whole thing with the girls deciding to just go do something like that all for Chibity. It just seems like...
Yeah.
Really? You would practically put him at risk for getting in serious...
Besides, the other thing, too, is like, what part of their horrible punk life past had anything to do with military covert op to steal Shining Gundam's data?
And why were you doing that, especially, wasn't there a penalty for trying to do that?
Yeah, there's a penalty.
And get him into trouble getting disqualified for that?
Yeah. Not only that, but apparently nobody taught them camo because they had the cargo pants, but each one of them has different tank tops. I'm pretty sure pink does not blend in with foliage.
That almost seems like just as almost as stupid as Maria Louise faking that whole kidnapping thing.
Oh yeah.
That's just kind of
they are right up there with her.
Because it's like you guys would stoop that low to do something like that.
Yeah, it's
come on, Chibity was dealing with a crisis of just recovering from getting brainwashed and all that stuff with the getting involved.
I'm not saying give him a pity massage, but maybe you could have done that whole Dear Chibity letter and stayed in New York.
Or something.
I don't know. It's all forced.
I think it could have been like, maybe they could have just said, we quit this because you seem to have no motivation to do whatsoever. And maybe that could have motivated, maybe if I go, find somewhere to train, maybe get his group back. I don't know.
So, moving on into... So, we're both 2. We both didn't like this. Episode 19, Fierce Battle, Dragon Gundam versus Bolt Gundam. This is the episode that I would like to say dropped Andrea's jaw to the floor for a few moments. But let's get into the explanation here. Domon and Rain, still training. Rain is working on the Gundam, but Domon's training. With in my opinion, the better outfit that he has, which I've never liked that jacket that he wears. I like the green shirt. Like that works for him. But while he's off training in a waterfall to figure out what the sword is trying to teach him, and Schwartzbruder is watching him in the background to see if he's actually learning something, out of nowhere comes Saishi. And he makes an entrance. Yeah, I could say that's an entrance.
Mm-hmm.
He basically jumps... I like how the episode description says this. Saishi, who refuses to train, suddenly jumps down from a cliff and pulls up Rain's dress, exposing her panties. We gotta stay here for a minute, because this was one of those jaw-dropping moments for you. Mm-hmm. Like, I looked over and she's like, just give us a feel into the mind of Andrea at this moment.
It kind of takes me back to that time when we were watching, what's the, I forgot, Die Ranger?
Die Ranger.
When you're dealing with that, that kid, the kid who's the White Ranger, just deciding to think of trying to look up girls' skirts or something.
Yeah, he uses like a wind attack and blows up the skirts.
Yeah, and it's like, here you have this young kid who's a Gundam fighter who thinks it's funny to go up and pull up.
Who has a lot of honor at stake, by the way. Like, he's got that other goal of restoring the Shaolin Temple. Like, he's supposed to be an honorable kid. And, yeah, go ahead and continue. And
you're like, how are you a Gundam fighter if you're acting like a little kid who needs to learn a little bit of boundaries there?
Boundaries, manners, all that. Maybe curb his puberty a little bit, because he's probably in the middle of puberty. That's probably why he did it.
Yeah.
Oh
my gosh.
This might sound creepy, but I actually love that moment, because it's one of those few moments of like, okay, this series is making fun of itself. Like, it knows it has a teenage boy in there, and what is a teenage boy gonna do? Especially to a character he calls sis. Because you remember what the White Ranger also did, because he was living with the Pink Ranger. You remember what he also did? He was making fun of her boobs and all that. So like, he's treating her like a big sister, which I'm pretty sure is why Saishi did that to Rain.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I've got to ask this: if you were in Rain's shoes, like, how hurt would this kid be?
Oh, he would probably be hurt.
Would he be in the hospital?
Well, he would be smacked upside the head.
Concussion?
I don't know.
To the point of a concussion? I think to the point of a concussion. I think you would have murdered him. Because yeah, that is a serious concept of boundaries and embarrassment and all that. So he runs off, but poor Domon, he takes the brunt of this, and I don't understand why. So Domon, he saw his girlfriend scream, or he heard Rain scream. Of course you're gonna look that way, and it's obviously in the middle of the act. So, I mean, is Domon at fault here? I've seen actual people debate that he is. Like, he shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have looked.
No offense, but if you heard her scream, she could have been in serious trouble.
Yeah.
Like a Dark Gundam would have just took
It might
off.
not have been Saishi pulling up her dress. It could have been a Dark Army guy. And he was trying to inject Dark Gundam cells, It could be.
So how could Domon be in the wrong there?
There is actual argument online, though, that he was. Now, to me, this is kind of one of the more touching moments of the relationship between Domon and Rain, because he goes straight cherry red, and he has that look of like, I've never considered this, but yeah, I like it. You know, he's confused now. He doesn't understand why this is bothering him, kind of thing. And oh man, Rain just blames him. I'm thoroughly convinced after at least a good portion of this episode goes through, Saisaichi's done nothing wrong. It's all Domon because he peaked.
I mean, I guess people could say, yeah, he was. I mean, if they think he's in the wrong, well, maybe the only thing.
But see, I don't see it that way.
Well, yeah, but the only thing that could say that is he could have just simply could have said, well, I didn't mean to look, like he could have said something like.
But instead, he decided to go back to his training.
Well, he'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about, and did not even kind of say.
And I actually like how he goes back to his training. He's like, and then falls in the water.
Because it's like, I think if you were saying, well, I'm not in the wrong, then you would be trying to find a way to justify your reasoning for looking instead of he kind of turns back looking like, never mind, I didn't want to look.
Like the perfect example that I'm going to give here is like, let's take this from our perspective. We're not married yet. And all of a sudden your little bratty kid brother, Alex, sorry, Alex, we got your little brother here. Your bratty kid brother decides to pull up your skirt, and I hear you screech, and then I look over, and immediately you blame me, but I'm not the one that did it.
I think it's just like, well, the only person you would have to blame is the person doing it. But,
yeah, exactly. Besides, your brother would know better.
But to take your anger out on somebody who just happened to look because you screamed?
Yeah, Rain is something else, but let's move on here because we could be at this all day. It's actually, in my opinion, it's one of my favorite moments in the series because it actually kind of starts things in a different direction between Rain and Domon, and I like that. So after that, Schwartz obviously notices this is a problem, but Saisaichi has decided that he is not going to stop with his antics. He does not want to train. He's very clearly told Zui-sen and Kei-un that he doesn't want to train. He doesn't see a point. He's the greatest Gundam fighter ever, right? Because he's only had like a couple of fights, and all of a sudden he's just Macho Man. So then we find out that apparently Neo-Russia is also in the Guyana Highlands. Wow, everybody came to Domon, didn't they? It's almost like Domon was having a barbecue or something. Mm-hmm. And Saisaichi decides to invade their camp and steal their rations, and criticizes them for not putting the proper spices on the rations. It's military rations. In fact, it's prison rations, Saisaichi. It's not supposed to taste good. But his luck streak goes off again as he catches Natasha skinny dipping in a pond. With a lot of very revealing pics. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just saying that if she was a streamer on Twitch, the amount of underboob and butt crack that she showed off here would get her banned. Uh-huh. I'm just saying. And look, I'm not knocking Natasha. Natasha's pretty hot. Considering, like, she's probably one of the better looking women in here. Yes, better than the 4 girls Chimney has, because that shit's creepy. But Natasha is just bathing, and Saisaichi then remembers he's a teenage boy, and he must ogle, and he's off in the bushes, he's ogling, until he accidentally drops his spoon, and then his good luck streak runs out. Natasha is pissed, starts shooting at him, because of course she would, she's Russian military, and immediately has the camp in an uproar because of an intruder. Like somebody may be spying on the bulk Gundam kind of thing. And while Saisaichi's trying to make his escape, he comes across Argo, who was just out walking around, and decides to be a teenage boy and pick a fight with a very big bear. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work out so well for him. He does like one epic kick, and Argo's just like, "What is this?
He brushes
You dirtied my vest." From here on in, I'm going to be doing as many Russian jokes as I can with Argo, because that's the character. Our friend Jiro will appreciate this. We're going to get a lot of Devil's Third moments because of Argo. Sorry, I cut you off.
He's like, you just dirtied my vest, and
yes.
brushing it off, like acting like. But he just stands there.
And so then Saisashi realized, oh crap, I'm boned. And immediately goes into his post-traumatic stress with the Dark Gundam, which is that he's come across somebody he can't beat, which it looks like in his fear, like he can't beat the Dark Gundam. And so at that point, when he comes across something he can't deal with, he's got to run away from it. Except in this case, Saisashi runs into a raging river. And he's saved, I guess.
Somehow.
Not sure. They don't really explain that, do they?
No, because I think one moment he falls in the river and all that stuff, and Argo's just watching or something. And then next moment,
Argo was walking off. He didn't care.
Well, yeah, he was
off looking for pretty flowers.
And then next thing you know, he's at where Domon and Rain are, and she's bandaging him up.
No. Things happen differently than that. So,
Oh, what?
Oh, I can't remember.
What, does he crawl out of the river?
Oh, actually, you know what? Yeah, no, you're right. Because Saisashi ends up back at Domon's camp, which I'm pretty sure he should have been murdered at that point. This is why I'm saying she blamed Domon. She healed him? Look, I get it. You're a doctor, but...
yeah, because you don't see him, like, lying on the shore and maybe somebody finding him.
He's bandaged up at this point.
Well, yeah, because she's taking care of him.
But she's the doctor that treated him. I get it. Do no harm, but... He didn't get punched. Like, there was no bump on his head. There was no big hand mark on his cheek. He had nothing. He got off scot-free. For the panty show, he got off scot-free. Domon got blamed. That's all I'm saying, guys. Domon got blamed. He shouldn't have gotten blamed. So at that point, Domon kind of questions Saisashi's logic of why he decided to go into the Neo-Russia camp, and this somehow ends up questioning Saisashi's manhood. I can't remember exactly how it happens, but he questions his manhood, and therefore Saisashi goes to grab the Dragon Gundam to head back to the Neo-Russia encampment and challenge Bolt Gundam, which Argo promptly refuses, saying, "I will not fight someone in your condition." Mm-hmm. And it's clearly stated in their confrontation, Argo did see something going on with Saisashi. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, like, he's just kind of made this decision of, like, I'm not going to mess with you, or I'm not going to fight you unless you're 100%, which Saisashi takes as an insult to his manhood.
Yeah.
But Natasha doesn't see it that way, because Sun's seen things that he shouldn't have seen, and immediately wants Dragon Gundam shot at and punished. So Saisashi has to go off into the distance, but Zuisen and Keiyun then pull Natasha aside and say, please make Bolt Gundam fight Dragon Gundam. You know, kind of like what they did with Domon. Like, seriously, does Saisashi fight any of his battles? Zuisen and Keiyun basically set up his opponents to try and teach him things. Oh, because, like, that's what they did with Domon to beat Dragon Gundam, so that it didn't fall into the wrong hands. That's what happened with Mummy Gundam, and now it's happening with Bolt Gundam.
Mm-hmm.
Except what's even better, Argo still refuses! Dude has a bomb on his chest! And he is still refusing to do the Warden's work! How is he not dead, Andrea? He's like, I go off to play with flowers now.
I have no idea how he gets away with all that.
what? Did she have a crush on him or something? Like, I think electroshock therapy would be implemented at this point. He's disobeyed a lot.
It's like, you go off and do it without my consent, and now you won't do it?
Yeah, exactly. And this is, as you're kind of seeing, like, this is kind of his Argo's and Natasha's relationship. He goes off and does what he wants, and then Natasha gets mad at him for not doing what she wanted. So at that point, like, I mean, I love it. It's a wonderful duality relationship there, as compared to like Domon and Rain. But yeah, it does. Like, when you look at the context of she's the warden, he's a prisoner, he has a bomb attached to his chest, he could die at any moment, and she's the one holding the button.
Mm-hmm. Apparently she doesn't want him killed as well.
I'm just saying, she's having some very nice wet dreams about him, and it's very clear. All I'm saying is that when she was skinny dipping in the pond, she was thinking of Argo caressing that body. I mean, am I wrong? Like, that's the only reason I could think of that she'd be doing this crap, is if she's got like some secret crush on him.
Yeah, because otherwise I'm like, unless there's a reason not to have him as a Gundam fighter anymore. Yeah. I mean,
so Saisaishi ends up back at the. Does he go back to the camp after that? Yes, he does. He goes back because he goes to complain and whine to Rain some more.
And he's just laying there like.
But while you have that going on, Domon finds Argo, and they have, in my opinion, a very nice conversation between the two of them. If I were to say anybody has legitimately become friends amongst the Shuffle Alliance crew, it's Domon and Argo.
That was quite an interesting conversation.
I actually like that, and he did actually go off to pet the pretty flowers, because he's messing with daisies, and he's explaining to Domon like why he won't fight Saisaishi. And we learn actually a couple of interesting things about Argo. Argo does not enjoy fighting as much as everybody else does. He is not, or at least he gives the aspect of like he hasn't enjoyed fighting since he's become a prisoner. Mm-hmm. So maybe when he was off being a space pirate, he enjoyed it, but now he finds no enjoyment in it. And the only time that has ever been different was with Domon. And so that's where they have like that mutual respect for each other. But it is actually a touching, cool friendship moment between the two of them that we haven't really had with, or at least I would argue we haven't had with Chimity. Definitely haven't had it with George. Because like Domon and George have like that condescending relationship. But it's actually a really cool, touching scene. It's just too bad it's interrupted with Saisaishi whining like a little biatch to Rain because he can't get shit done. So at that point, then we have another horrible revelation that supposedly because Saisaichi's mad that Argo won't fight him, it looks like Dragon Gundam comes in and destroys the Russian camp, which then pushes Natasha over the edge, and she immediately demands that Argo must fight Saisaichi in order to take revenge, kind of thing. And we're at this point, we're all thinking, yeah, he's pushed over the edge, and he did this, which then goes into a challenge between Saisaichi and Argo, which actually amounts to being a really great fight.
Yeah.
Holy shit! All of the Dragon Gundam bouts in this series are the best ones.
And while Bolt Gundam's just kind of sitting there like.
But this is actually also the closest thing we've had to a fight. It's lasted a majority of the episode. It's actually had tactics and strategy being put into it, but it's actually really good. And I'm just pointing out, like, the best fights so far, at least according to this podcast, are with Dragon Gundam in them. Am I wrong?
No.
It was really good. I especially like the fact that where Domon had issues with the ball and chain that Bolt Gundam had, Saisaichi used that against him and actually got Argo to basically be thrown off his balance and to get trapped by his own chain and mace. Which then prompts like one of the most epic, most badass scenes in all of this series. As Saisaishi is lunging for the kill, Argo acknowledges his inner badass, goes, "I cannot afford to lose!" And it rips his Gundam's arm off. Ugh. This guy has a thing for ripping arms off. Have you noticed that?
He's like, I'm gonna just... He'll become like the Hulk or something.
Yeah, this is actually one of those few moments where I've got a confession to make. I don't like Argo's voice actor. I think they gave him way too caring of a voice in a weird way. But this is one of those times where I absolutely disagree with that, and I think it was a perfect pick. Because once you have that, I cannot afford to lose, it's like, okay, now I get why you were picked to be Argo Gulski. And it makes sense now. But that is an epic-ass moment.
Yeah, when he gets into the fight. Especially, I love it how he's told...
Like, up until this point, Bolt Gundam's winning, and Schwartz even kind of points it out. Like, Saisaishi's tuckering himself out, and Bolt Gundam's done nothing. Like, he's got all the energy in the world, and Dragon Gundam's running out. Like, this is out of nowhere. This accidental loss that Argo might suffer, and then Argo out of he's expressed very little emotion up until this point, and then we get that. We get that scene. It's really well done. It's a really awesome fight, and actually one of the few that I would recommend that if you're gonna see G Gundam, you have to see this fight.
Especially, I like it how when Argo was talking to Domon and saying he doesn't like Gundam fights very much, but he found some satisfaction when he fought against Domon and his Gundam.
Which, when you take like Gundam's fight or Shining Gundam's fight into account, yeah, it's pretty cool too. But it's kind of as quick as everything else. This was a pretty lengthy bout, and in fact, you could say like Saisaishi in one fight with Argo realized what it took basically 2 fights with Argo for Domon to figure out. So you kind of also see just how much of a prodigy Saisaishi is.
Yeah, and he's like, I cannot wait until I have another epic fight like that, you know?
Yes. Yeah, so we then, after this fight kind of gets resolved, find out that no, the Dragon Gundam that came in and burned down the Russian camp was in fact a Dark Gundam looking like, or a Dark Army mobile suit looking like Dragon Gundam, and now there's a bunch of them. And because unfortunately Saisaishi and Argo are too weak to fight from their own battle, Domon has to come in and save the day with the super mode and take out all of the other Dragon Gundam lookalikes. But ultimately the day is saved. Saisaishi overcomes his problems, his fears with the Dark Gundam, because that's kind of Zuisen and Keiyun's philosophy here, is that if he faces a strong opponent and he overcomes him, he will regain the confidence that he's had, and he'll have the will to train again. And it works. Like, you could make the argument that aside from the arm being ripped off, which is a really epic moment, Saisaishi won the bout in a weird way. Like, I think the official ranking on it is that it's a draw, but you could make the argument that, yeah, sure, you ripped your arm off, but it wouldn't have stopped Saisaishi from taking your head, kind of thing. So, yeah, Saisaishi was the winner. So Zuisen and Keiyun's plan kind of worked in a weird way. I mean, you have a look like I'm wrong. So at that point, feel free to prove if I'm wrong.
Well, not unless of Argo.
I'm pretty sure Argo would have done everything in his power to win. But the problem that I have with that is that the logic is just kind of there. Like the what do we even call it? The dart or the spear that's inside the ponytail was out, and it was aiming straight between the eyes. So I don't know.
It's hard to say.
one thing that we're in agreement about. Probably the best fight we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I guess we have to have that comparison. Is it better than Saisaishi versus Domon? I'd argue yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the first fight between Dragon Gundam and Shining Gundam is good, and it has some good moments. But this one is, like, knock down, drag out. This is how the Gundam fight should be. They fight until they can't fight anymore. And that's what happens here. So, yeah, that's pretty much the episode. So final verdict on Fierce Battle, Dragon Gundam versus Bolt Gundam. One of the best episodes so far, in my opinion. It's got the level of humor. Like, I get it. The Panty Peak is a frustrating thing, but it's got that equal amount of comedy, as well as like hardcore action, which Gundam is well known for. It really worked for me. Like, are there any things that you had a problem with?
No, I thought it was pretty well balanced.
Okay, so in a score out of 5, what would you rate Fierce Battle, Dragon Gundam versus Bolt Gundam? I'm gonna say a 5.
I was gonna say 5.
Yeah, it's
That's
one of my
probably...
favorites. Even watching this series again, and I've watched it a couple of times, I love this fight. It's a good episode. So then we move on into episode 20, which is George Beat the Nightmare. So it's finally time for George to show up. And guess what? He's dealing with problems too. So he's out in the Guyana Highlands. Seriously, man, like, does Domon just like make the best ribs ever? Everybody follows Domon. And I also love the fact it's like, we don't care about this Shuffle Alliance thing. We're all going to go and get back in the Gundam fight. Oh, wait, we're all back in the Guyana Highlands.
We're all back
training.
Fighting
the Dark Gundam with Domon, it looks like.
Domon was just dragging us all into this.
So you don't care about the Shuffle Alliance, but you're following the King of Hearts around. So maybe you do. So George is out basically trying to figure out why he's been suffering from nightmares. Guess what? Of the Dark Gundam. So he's also having kind of the same nightmares that Chibity was, where he's getting Dark Gundam cells all over his body. By the way, we should also point out, Argo, not a problem. Not a problem. He does not. He's like the only one amongst the 4 that is not having some post-traumatic stress from the Dark Gundam.
He is, but he's not showing it.
There you go. That must be it.
Maybe it's just the face. He's like,
how could you ever tell?
No, it'd be like one of those moments where he has that look, like his usual look, like he's just staring off into space, and then out of the corner, like his temples, like.
Yeah. There you go.
Just kidding.
There you go.
I'm only kidding.
So back to George. George is dealing with nightmares that he's having because of the Dark Gundam, but his butler Raymond thinks that there's something a little bit more here, and we get introduced to another new Gundam. And I know I said that there was going to be a couple, or that there was only going to be one here, but there's a couple, because you got Shadow Gundam. We finally got that reveal. And we get to see George has a sparring partner in the Rose Gundam with Raymond's Butler Gundam. I'm officially calling it Butler Gundam.
That was the most ridiculous.
And it's an outdated piece of crap. It doesn't even have a mobile tray system, guys. He's using a car driving wheel to pilot it.
I don't know how you can manage a robot like that with a steering wheel.
Not only that, but did you notice a couple of times that they actually made it look like the mobile suit was like steam powered? Like, there were a couple of moments where you'd see like steam coming out of it.
Yeah.
And man, he pilots it like he has a mobile tray system, because it is such a doofy looking Gundam. But one of the things I find the most endearing about it is all of these Gundams have these tiaras that are always kind of signifying the protagonist characters as well as the antagonists. And they did something really funny with the tiara this time, and the tiara formed Butler Gundam's mustache. That was really funny to me as a Gundam fan.
How is that even considered a Gundam, though?
I'm calling it Butler Gundam.
Okay.
I'm not considering it a Gundam type, but Yeah, it's not an RX-78 type, but I can't think of anything else to call it other than Butler Gundam. Because it's a giant butler!
And yet, why are they fencing in robots instead of just doing it? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. In fact, it actually might have been a better idea for Raymond to do it that way, because we find out that Raymond is the one who trained George to fence.
True.
So maybe it would have been better for him to just fence him instead of get into the Butler Gundam to do it.
I know. That's why I'm like, why do they have to fence?
I don't know. Maybe like a lot of the episodes here only occur in the Gundam. I don't know.
Who knows?
They don't really explain this.
It's just funny.
But meanwhile, we go to, actually, this is the beginning of the episode, but we go to the Neo-France colony, and some like major breakout has happened, and a shuttle is heading towards Earth. And we're not sure how this comes into to handle things, but George and Raymond are training, and well, Raymond knows that Domon and Rain are out here and training and are training for the Dark Gundam kind of thing, or training for the Gundam fight. And so Rain is immediately asked by Raymond to take a look at George, like do a physical examination to see if maybe she can find something wrong with him. And maybe also to up his confidence, I don't know. They kind of hint at that because, man, she gets like AAA treatment from Raymond. Like, she's getting red wine in the middle of lunch, all that. Like, she's getting treated like a queen, except by George. Unfortunately, George kind of sees through what Raymond's doing and is trying to put a stop to it. Because George is convinced it's not going to work. And in my opinion, if you already have that kind of mindset, yeah, it's probably not going to work. So I do think George is in the right here. But I also think George is kind of in the wrong because he's not really, at least if you got a different impression, then say so. I don't think George is really looking for anything to solve the problem because he's too busy wallowing in it. He's not really looking to solve it. He's too busy wanting pity because of it. Am I wrong?
No.
I think that's kind of how George is taking this. So Raymond, unfortunately, kind of gets beat down in this episode because all he's doing is trying to take care of George, who they also kind of hint not only is he a butler to the Dasan family, but he's also kind of a father figure to George.
Mm-hmm.
He is the Alfred to George Dasan's Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
So at that point, it kind of makes you feel bad that Raymond gets kind of knocked around in this episode. Oh, and I guess we also should mention that one of the nightmares happens and we get our one cameo of Maria Louise.
We're like, oh, joy.
Where she's being destroyed by the Dark Gundam. That was kind of satisfying. Just seeing her, like, her corpse in the hands of the Dark, that kind of made you feel good. Considering the last encounter we had.
Well, you got your kidnapping.
Yeah, there you go. So Raymond's next tactic is, instead of using Rain, he's going to use Domon. He wants Domon to challenge George. And he also comes with more of a reason why George would have issues right now. Supposedly, when George was appointed the Gundam fighter, they did a big tournament to figure out who was going to represent Neo-France. And he was up against the previous Gundam fighter, I think his name is Jean-Paul Mirabeau. Mirabeau in his Mirage Gundam is kind of a douchebag. He has no problem exploiting weaknesses of fighters, including using the audience as human shields, for lack of a better term. And is very quickly, after he does this with George, he is disqualified from being the fighter for Neo-France again, and George is appointed, which Mirabeau does not take very well. Actually tries to take out George, and instead some missile fire from Mirage Gundam destroys some of the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Which George then blames himself for. He wasn't the one that launched the missile, but George blames himself for that happening. What? Like, do you blame George for that happening?
I think George was trying to help, but unfortunately things didn't turn out.
Yeah,
the
he
way
couldn't
you
have
hoped.
stopped Mirabo from doing that. He couldn't have. It all happens too fast. And frankly, like, even with his rose bits, which he did have at that point, there was too many seconds that had gone by the time the mission was launched. So, yeah, it was going to happen regardless, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, like, I don't know, this has never made sense to me, and in my opinion hurts George's character, because you're blaming something on yourself that wasn't your fault, and it's very clearly not your fault. Like, we don't need Raymond to show us this. It's kind of like you see that and go, how is this affecting anything? Except it is. Because George finds Raymond doing this, and it's basically considered that Raymond revealed confidential information about the Neo-France Gundam fighter. And because of this dishonor, George fires Raymond.
Yeah, that was sad.
Which, it was actually a sad moment. You feel bad for Raymond. But then it gets better, because then you see him parked by a nearby bar. I didn't realize the Guyana Highlands had such great bars. And there's a parking lot with Butler Gundam in it. And he's like, George, why on earth would you do this to me? Barkeep, more coffee.
Coffee?
Coffee, right? I get it, French stereotype of coffee, but...
True, but it's like, maybe it's
you
like...
could have said more wine. I get it, kids show, but you could have said more wine. That would have made sense. Even kids know that the French love their wine.
True, but it's probably like the similar thing with, you can't say kill, you can't say died or something. But maybe you just couldn't say more beer or wine or anything like that. You just have to say coffee.
More coffee. More coffee. Yeah, you're not drinking coffee. And there's nothing pointing to you drinking coffee. So, yeah, that's a thing.
Maybe they just slip in the liquor inside the coffee.
Yeah, I could see him doing that. Like, he has a little flask. Yeah, he could totally do that. Yes, give me more coffee, barkeep. So while he's at the bar kind of feeling sorry for himself, and while George is feeling sorry for himself because now he's sorry that he fired Raymond, Raymond sees on the television, again, how are you getting such great reception in the future in the Guyana Highlands where there's no cell service or anything like that? I'm telling you, man, like, there's something going on in the Guyana Highlands, and that's what's bringing all the Gundams there. He finds out that the incident we saw earlier was a prison break from the Neo-France colony. After, destroying the audience and killing a number of people, Mirabo was sentenced to 1,000 years in prison. And he just barely did a jailbreak. And he is heading to the Guyana Highlands to face George for revenge. Wow, awfully convenient, right?
For how long?
He was sentenced to 1,000 years in prison.
And how does he not look like he's aged?
Well, he's not been there that long.
I know.
Like, this is maybe a few years.
I guess that's true.
But considering the amount of people he probably murdered, 1,000 years is probably appropriate.
Probably.
So, like, he ain't getting out, but he got out. And he brings Mirage Gundam to challenge George. But it's just so happened to be very convenient that when he landed on Earth, he came into contact with the Dark Gundam. And now he has the powers of the Dark Gundam and DG cells and all that. And he is fueled by his revenge, or his need for revenge against George. You remember how I said it was forced in Shibity's episode? It feels kind of forced here too, doesn't it?
Oh, yes.
So, long story short, George faces off against Mirage Gundam. I'm not really going to have us do like an evaluation of this because, I mean, really there isn't much to Mirage Gundam that we don't already see stereotypically on Rose Gundam. So, aside from his love of missiles, he loves guns and missiles, so great, good on you. It's up to Raymond to go and save the day. Like, he must make his way to George to save him.
Oh my gosh.
Which leads to probably one of the better comedic moments.
But that was kind of sappy too.
I loved it. I love that moment. Butler Gundam is one of the great things to come out of this.
And catching those missiles in that.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that too. But back into the fight. Now Domon is here too. He's seeing if George can overcome his fears, as well as Schwartz. Schwartz is watching everything, remember? And George actually goes crazy in the middle of the fight and immediately wants to just destroy Mirabeau. And Butler Gundam comes in and Raymond's like, please come, George, come back to the man we once knew. You know, please, the heart of the cards guide you. And George immediately realizes what he's been doing. And instead says, if I am truly worthy of this Shuffle Crest, let me cleanse Mirabeau of the influence of the Dark Gundam. Son of a bitch! It took the previous person's life to free you from it.
Mm-hmm.
And no, it's totally easy for George to do that. And not a scratch. He's completely fine. Didn't take his life. This is so dumb.
Yes.
Why not just let Domon come in and purify things? No, George had to earn it. Oh, geez, this is so forced. And yeah, that's pretty much how the episode ends. George learns a lesson out of this, I guess. Which I guess cures him of his nightmares. I guess. They don't really kind of point that out. He rehires Raymond, so thankfully, you know, Raymond still has a job and he gets to keep his Butler Gundam. Which I hate to even reveal this, but we never see it again.
Mm-hmm.
This is the only time we see it, which is sad because they had a good time with it. Yeah, so final verdict on George beat the nightmare. It was kind of a pain to sit through, right?
It was like,
and now we've had 2 episodes like that because
I still like the whole.
It's actually kind of funny here. We have put such great praise to Saisaishi and Argo in this episode of the podcast, and we are just dumping on Chibity and George, just dumping on them. It's not really even their fault. These were badly written episodes, but sorry, your final verdict on this.
I mean, I still like the whole thing. I don't remember which episode it was when they were having their departing, and you know, George was like offering a rose to.
Yeah, he offered a rose to Rain, but Raymond gave her the kiss.
Yeah, that was
actually good, and it embarrassed both of them. That was awesome.
That was classic.
He's like, you know, do I dare do this? I don't think that would be appropriate, but yeah. Okay, so back to this episode. Like, I don't have good thoughts on it. It's, in my opinion, it's more forced than the Chibity episode, because I think they literally went, oh crap, you know, at least with Chibity, he's a fighter. We haven't really characterized George as a fighter, so how do we fix this? Oh, okay, and then this was the solution they came up with. It's in my opinion, aside from Butler Gundam, it is worse than Chibity. It's worse than the Chibity episode. But what do you think?
I'd give it a 2.5.
Okay, and your reasoning being?
Well, despite the Raymond stuff was really funny and stuff, but it just seems like, I mean, Chibity had his ups and downs, but he still tried to at least, you know, take the approach of actually trying, whereas George was like, doesn't want to have anything to do with it unless he actually, you know, it was like one of those life or death
refusing to get examined, refusing to deal with the past, refusing to deal with anything, but yet it's all my fault.
Until it was like a life or death situation.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, then, you know.
At least Chibity kind of shows that he wants to fix this. George is just like wallowing in his own self-pity.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I'm going to give it a 2, and the only reason I'm going to give it a 2, The only saving grace here is Butler Gundam. That's it. Butler Gundam is the only thing that saves this episode for me. If not, it would have been a 1 out of 5. It honestly would have been.
And the whole thing...
It is the worst character development episode of all of them.
And the whole thing of the whole cleansing thing...
Yes.
Seemed a little too corny.
Yes.
It kind of gives the whole original Shuffle Alliance, you know?
But I would guarantee that the original Jack of Diamonds was probably much more of a fighter than George. So why did it take his life to save you, but then you didn't need to sacrifice yours?
It just takes that whole sacrificing everything to, you know, just be like, well, that was a waste.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, it's all a waste, and kind of like this episode, it's a waste of space. You don't understand why it exists. So yeah, I'm giving it a 2, but only because of Raymond. Raymond is the one thing that saves it in this whole deal. That and the epic moment where you see Domon holding George back, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he prematurely goes into the super mode. That was actually kind of funny. Especially when you show them both in their fight suits.
Well,
that leotard is not in any way masculine for George ever.
And that's kind of funny. He tells Rain, like, this is not our fight. We don't get involved. And then later on,
and then he gets involved. Yeah.
It's like, what happened to not getting involved? Because it's not your fight.
But look, the other thing I'm going to say about that particular moment is I completely get why there are memes of that exact scene put to Barry White music. Okay, George, just that mobile trace suit, that fight suit does not give him any kind of masculinity whatsoever, and it's very clear in that moment, because like you'd almost say, did we just walk in on something we shouldn't have?
Dude, I don't even want to picture Raymond going through the mobile trace thing.
I don't know. I still think it might be pretty epic, but that's just me. I mean, I have to ask this question now, because we've criticized George's fight suit a couple of times now. Would you be caught dead in that?
I can't imagine.
No.
I mean, seeing Rain going through the whole mobile trace sequence.
Would you rather wear hers than his? You had to think about it. You had to think about it.
I don't want to think about that.
But you had to, which means I'm kind of right. It does not help George in the slightest. All right, so to kind of wrap up this episode, we've covered all 4 of these, but as I addressed earlier, here's how we're going to address better DVD or whatever. In your opinion, of the 4 episodes that we watched this time around, what was the best one?
Definitely the Argo and...
Yes, I would agree with you. Fierce Battle, Bolt Gundam versus Dragon Gundam versus Bolt Gundam. I would agree wholeheartedly with you. It is the episode that kind of sells this whole bunch. It's the only character development episode in the Guyana Highlands that I'm even remotely invested in. And so yeah, I completely agree. And in the opposite, what is the worst episode in your opinion of this group? For me, it's obvious. It's George Beat the Nightmare. It's horrible.
Yeah, that one.
With a very close second being Steal the Secret Scheme of the Beautiful Warriors. Because they are, to me, they're like neck and neck. They're both equally bad. But Raymond saves it a little bit more. At that point, I might say that Chimneys kind of squeezes through, because I can't deal with the girls, but I can deal with Raymond. Yeah, I'm still going to say George Beat the Nightmare. What would you say is the worst?
I would say the same.
George Beat the Nightmare. Okay, so that's the best and the worst, and then we're also going to do best moment that we had in this whole experience. Best moment is the entire fucking fight with Dragon Gundam and Bolt Gundam. That was awesome. With a close second for me being Schwartz getting Domon's lunch money. Because that's awesome. Where's your super mode, Domon? Come out and show me, Domon. I love it. What was your best moment through this?
I would say the fight, the Gundam fight
Between Schwartz and Domon, or Argo and
no,
Saisaishi?
Argo and Saisaishi.
Okay. And then the worst moment that happened throughout this whole thing.
The worst moment?
The worst moment that happened throughout these 4 DVDs. Or these 4 episodes.
I'd say the thing that annoyed me was the girls doing their whole, let's go bad.
Anytime the girls were involved, yeah.
Let's go on our let's do like in the old days, go on our bad streak and go do this. It's like, why?
Okay. No, I completely agree with that. That was painful to watch. Worst moment in this. I mean, I kind of don't want to go with what you said, just so that we're not always in agreement.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go with George's backstory. That was pointless. It left you with more questions about George than you had answers. And now, like, if anybody was invested in George, you don't have any reason to be. Because, like, oh, wow, he's kind of the wuss of the 4 of them, or of the 5 of them, and that sucks, because I like the original Jack of Diamonds, and he was way more badass. Could we have kept him instead? So, yeah, I'm going to say George's backstory just so that we have different answers on that.
Oh, yeah.
And this one is going to be kind of the left hook here. I'm going to say, like, most surprising, shocking moment, but it could also be, like, the funniest moment, the most embarrassing moment, things like that. And I think we have to acknowledge dem panties, man. Dem panties. I've got to give that. Like, and I'm going to couple that with Natasha. It's just like, wow, the fan service was strong in this episode. That's got to be the most shocking, surprising thing for me. What would it be for you?
Man, those two, I just, you can't deny that.
Yeah, you say it's the panties and Natasha for you.
And poor Domon's like stuck with that. I think he slipped on purpose just to.
Yeah, there you go. He's like, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this? Thank you, martial arts training. Oh, it's a great moment. All right, so yeah, I think we're both in agreement here that Natasha skinny dipping and also I want to put it as an acknowledgement. The stupidest moment is how Saisaishi gets caught. He drops this. Come on. Every teenage boy knows you don't drop shit when that stuff happens. And he drops the spoon and then, yeah, almost eats lead. Yeah, I think we've got to acknowledge that part too. But that's going to go ahead and do it for this episode. It was great. It was a mix of good and bad here. But when we come back, we're actually going to have a lot of real fun and a lot of really serious moments, as the next DVD will wrap up the Guyana Highlands arc. Yeah, they're not really that long to become arcs, but that's the best way I know how to describe it. Until then, I think it's only appropriate for us to end the episode the way that we did before, which is until next time, guys, Gundam fight!
Ready?
Go! No, we're supposed to do it together, remember?
Okay.
So, Gundam fight!
Ready?